People talk about a revolution in the Sahel, but the real revolution is not in slogans against the West. It lives inside a balance sheet. This is the story of the BCID, a new confederal bank, announced in Bamako, late May 2025. Its initial target, 500 billion CFA francs. It is the instrument that could decide the legacy of Ibrahim Traore, a liberator, or only an orator. Over the next 12 to 18 months, 5% of national tax revenue must be paid in and turned into at least 3 cross-border projects, with public files and real disbursement schedules. This is the biggest gamble of Traore's career. So, what is the first proof of sovereignty? A power plant that lights schools for the future? Or a railway that secures the present, moving goods and soldiers at lower cost? Welcome to Ibrahim Traore's projects, where sovereignty is measured in concrete, steel, and quarterly reports. Here is the ground you need beneath the slogans. After leaving the regional bloc, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger formed the Alliance of Sahel States. Reigns crisis on sea definition of the UC. If the old house would not shelter them, they would build a new one. Room by room, budget line by budget line. Inside that house sits the BCID. It is an investment and development bank, not a central bank, and not a new currency. The CFA franc zone and its union-wide rules still form the payment pipe for salaries, invoices, tenders, and debt service. In other words, today's money rails still run through the Central Bank of West African states. And every serious project must be able to travel those rails without drama. That is the sovereignty paradox. You want independence, but you must drive it through the very infrastructure you say constrains you. This is... Name the visible obstacles. There are sanctions and political penalties from the old regional club. And there is the franc CFA design and the habit of external oversight from Dakar and from Paris. There are credit rating ceilings that keep borrowing costs high, insurance premiums that rise with every checkpoint, and investors who worry about headline risk. These fricchecks, they tax them. They add a quiet security surcharge to every bag of cement, every transformer, every rail sleeper. So why create this bank now? Because isolation is expensive, and because Pan-Africanism cannot live on applause alone. BCID is meant to be a financial weapon that turns Africa rising from a slogan into a spreadsheet, and from a spreadsheet into a construction site. If it works, it will widen the lane for procurement, co-financing, and local content across the Sahel Alliance. If it fails, it will be another press release, drowned by the noise of crisis. Who will stand with the Sahel? There are established partners like the African Development Bank and the West African Development Bank. There are potential partners in the South and the East who speak the language of infrastructure first. Funds linked to BRICS Africa, sovereign wealth funds from energy economies, and bilateral lenders outside the Paris orbit. There are also diaspora engineers, lawyers, and project managers who can translate a dream into contracts. All of that is possibility, not destiny. The deciding factor is still domestic. Paid-in capital is the first vote of confidence. Clean governance is the second. Without those two, no one serious will follow. With those two, even cautious money will pick up the phone for the months ahead. And that is the yardstick we will use as we follow the bank from promise to practice, from a policy speech to a signed disbursement order. Let us pin the clock to the wall. The story of this bank is not a blur of headlines. It is a timeline you can verify, with dates, documents, and money moving, from promises to accounts. Milestone 1. Bamako, May 2025. Leaders of the Sahel Alliance presented a vision, for a confederal investment and development bank. Initial target, 500 billion CFA francs. An intention to channel 5% of national tax revenue into paid-in capital. In plain language, the press conference must become a ledger entry. Announcements are wind. Paid in cash is weight. From that day forward, the task is simple and hard. Demolition into a capital base, and a short list of cross-border projects that can move first. Milestone 2, Niamey, July 2025. Applause gives way to paperwork. Lawyers draft a charter, mandate and limits. Treasurers and project officers design the governance frame, board, audit, credit committee. Technicians assemble the first priority list and write down the rules of the road, eligibility criteria, scoring rubrics, procurement standards, disclosure templates, and a quarterly reporting calendar. Mukden, they also map how money will travel on today's payment rails. Scrutin so each invoice can clear without drama. Now, the breaking point. First quarter of 2026, the first budget execution reports, after the bank becomes operational. This is where the 5% promise meets arithmetic. We will look for There is also an invisible toll, even when the paperwork is clean. Call it the security tax. Insurance premia rise. Construction sites need escorts and extra perimeter costs. Lawyers bend around checkpoints and broken bridges, pushing up fuel, maintenance, and time. Add risk surcharges, narrow their bids, or walk away. This is our lifting around forward opportunity from the risk-sharing of Black Sirius. Regulating political risk insurance, third-party escrow, indexed price clauses for fuel and cement, and funded contingencies for site security and community liaison. Which exact report do you want us to scrutinize in the first quarter of 2026? The Finance Ministry's quarterly budget execution statement, Tattle and Disbursement Report, Presumption Gazette that lists winning bids and contract amounts. Tell us now, and we will place a marker on that page and return with receipts. Follow the money, because this is where speeches either grow legs or fall apart. Start with the simplest question a serious lender asks. How much BCID paid in capital is on the table today? Paid in capital is cash, not clout. It is the money you wire, not the promise you wave. Think of it as chips slid across the felt for everyone to see. It signals credibility, sets the floor for co-financing, and tells house is open for business. Column capital is different. It is a pledge, with conditions. A line that can be drawn upon in stress, a notarized intention. Seems the bank's size, and reassures rating agencies there is a cushion. Callable capital does not build a substation or a bridge. It does not pour concrete. In every serious conversation with African Development Bank staff, both to multilateral desks or private infrastructure funds, first remains the same. Show me the paid-in, then we will talk about leverage. Now, translate the 5% tax contribution into something tangible. These are illustrative scenarios to make the challenge visible, not final numbers. If Burkina Faso's total tax revenue in the last pre-launch budget were roughly 2 trillion CFA francs, then if Mali's tax revenue were around 1.5 trillion CFA francs, 5% would mean roughly 75 billion. The sensitivity here is defense outlays. If urgent security spending surges, the quarterly paid-in flow may thin, unless offset elsewhere. Here is the paradox we must name with a steady voice. The Sahel Alliance wants financial independence, yet in the near term, every payment, every tender, every foreign exchange conversion still runs through the rails of the CFA franc system and the regional central bank in Dakar. That is the sovereignty paradox. You can declare a new direction, but your invoices must travel on the old road. Prerequisite his African politics explained, not as theory, but as wire transfers, cutoff times, and reconciled ledgers. What does that mean in practice? Contracts must be written in a format lenders and auditors trust, standard bidding documents, clear pre-qualification rules, and a calendar private firms can plan around, are not nice to have. They are oxygen. Disbursement should tie to milestones that can be proven, with multi-layer signatures and escrow accounts. So value moves only when work is verified. If a contractor lays 1 kilometer of line, ceremonial meter of payment should move 1 step as well. Where disputes arise, the contract needs an agreed forum and a timetable for resolution. Does not die in paperwork. The compliance spine matters just as much as the concrete. If the bank wants private co-investors, it must pass the same anti-money laundering, Twitter, and counter-terrorist financing checks that govern global finance. Know your customer rules must be routine, not an afterthought. Winning bidders, disclosed in plain language. Sanctions screening, strict and documented. None of this is about pleasing distant capitals. It is about building a reputation that lets cautious capital enter, without fear of surprise. There is also the cold math of currency risk. Revenues and many domestic costs are counted in CFA francs, while turbines, rails, and transformers are often priced in dollars or euros. Without a plan, a swing in exchange rates can erase margins and freeze sites that are otherwise sound. Freezesser is not an exotic hedge no one can explain. Complied is a small menu practitioners already understand. Flood cover, where it exists and is affordable. Index clauses that link payments to reference prices for fuel and steel. Local currency tranches for labor and materials that can be sourced at home. Retorno rules, written down, applied consistently. None of this changes the basic reality of the rail you ride on. The pipe is the pipe. Term strategy is simple. Master the pipe. Publish the rules that govern it. Auditable. From capital call to contractor invoice. Where the pipe is narrow, sequence projects so disbursement peaks do not collide. Where the pipe is leaky, plug it with reconciliations and monthly variance reports that any citizen can read. This is how governance and transparency become habits rather than slogans. So what is the place of the new bank inside this landscape? It is not a replacement for the West African Development Bank, BCID, or for the African Development Bank. It should act as an originator and a co-financier for cross-border projects, experimenting as with a new bank for cross-border project. BCID and forged banks and Song Meals View, Pass Force Mels, a new world forces. Clear positive spillovers, soda soluble betreed spices. The kind of benefits no single ministry will fund alone. Clear Kelford, Song Meals View, interconnectors that cut diesel use across borders. Players Savers, Passhide, shared water corridors that stabilize 2 harvests at once. Experimentically lead, actor Magner of the system setters, PCT false salings that bowl. So money experimentically offered a moment, feel donory, but not matter be trends forces. So, also talking about the fall skills. Gases, for the West African Development Bank, burn now leaves, bank and song part of estate. And new scales. Burn now leaves, started math. Burn now leaves co-NB private nath. Burn now leaves, starts documents and des. Burn now leaves, crafts / co-MB. Shafely, burn now leaves cavants and des. Burn now leaves co-NB. Burn now leaves, starts documents and des. Shefley and burn now leaves co-NB private nath. Burn now leaves, starts documents and des. Shafley and burn now leaves, starts documents and des. Shafley and per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, burn now I leaves, dots documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Pod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Prod by, Shafely and prod by, per now I leaves, starts documents in des. Both sides of a line. This is African geopolitics. At the level of contracts and cash flows, the question is plain. If money cannot move cleanly through the current pipe, how will sovereignty be proven? By mastering the pipe you have, by writing rules you can enforce. Federally number that backs each claim. Gratwitman, tell us your standard, and we will test the bank against it in the months ahead. Let us turn promises into a scoreboard. Can read without a finance degree. We have mastered the pipe we ride on. Now we need a simple yardstick that holds leadership to a public standard. Kang it is. A three-light system anyone in the Sahel Alliance or the Diaspora can check month by month. And politics explained. In practice, not in theory. Indicator 1. Cumulative paid-in capital against the 5% commitment. In plain terms, how much BCID paid-in capital is actually in the bank. Confiscated means greater than or equal to 90% of the target for the period. Redhead means 50% to under 90%. Red means below 50%. Measure it the way an auditor would. Treasury announces a capital call. Ministries transfer funds. The regional central bank confirms receipt. The bank ledger shows allocation to equity accounts. How in reconciliation against the capital call notice? Our monthly note shows the target, the actual, and the variance. Irrational, written in words a citizen can understand. Why begin with paid in cash? Because it is the first vote of confidence, and it sets the ceiling for everything that follows. With green, the bank can co-finance with partners and keep a regular calendar of approvals. With yellow, momentum exists, but confidence wobbles and borrowing costs rise. Windshield, the bank becomes a headline, not a lender. Flushing friendly investors wait on the sidelines. This is the cleanest test of discipline on the 5% tax contribution. The line we will read first each month. Indicator 2. The count of cross-border projects that have a board resolution, a published procurement plan, and a dated disbursement schedule. Green means 3 or more. Yellow means 1 or 2. Ronde means none. A project without any one of those 3 elements is not real. It is an intention on paper. We will list each project by name. the country pair it connects, the scope of works, the expected social and economic impact, and the document links that prove it is ready to move. This is where Pan-Africanism becomes measurable, because benefits cross borders, households, and markets. Indicator 3. Governance and transparency on documents. Green means the charter, the full board roster, the project scoring rulebook, the quarterly capital call report, the quarterly disbursement report, and the data room index are all published on time and in full. Yellow means partial disclosure, or late publication. Red means silence. A serious bank does not hide its spine, it publishes it. That is how African geopolitics earns trust, at the level of contracts and cash flows. It is also how citizens audit power without asking permission. One more measure belongs on the same page as money, a human KPI. It tracks community consultation and land transparency for each approved project. Remove a general wideness, adulterated consultation meetings with minutes in local languages, ambiguous grievance channels with response times met, Hesman action plan where relocation is unavoidable, becomes her compensation schedules paid on time and receipted. Parcel maps for right-of-way, endent monitoring note issued on a fixed timetable. Submerged means partial coverage, or late disclosures that force communities to guess. Red means no consultation, no maps, opaque land transfers, or evidence of coercion. A project that fails this human test cannot be called a success, even if the money flows on time. We will publish this scoreboard in every update, line by line, so citizens, researchers, and cautious investors see the same picture. We will timestamp each entry, keep an archive, and note changes across quarters. When numbers improve, we will explain why. When numbers fall, we will show the friction that caused the drop. If data goes missing, we will say that too.
And that account of Fornia to Sizamoust of table you can check in next month.
Which single metric is your #1 indicator to judge Ibrahim Traore? The paid-in line that proves the 5% is real. Submerged count that proves construction is coming. The disclosure grade that proves governance is mature. Plunge now, and we will lock it into the scoreboard as the headline you see first, every time you return. Start where people live. In the northern town of Dori, the midwife Aissatou keeps a small kerosene lamp on a shelf. A habit learned the hard way. When the grid goes dark, she still has births to shepherd and incubators to watch. A cross-border solar plant, combined with a transmission line that ties 2 Sahel Alliance countries together, would turn that lamp into a memory. It is not only an engineering diagram, in quanto it is a lifeline. It is what Pan-Africanism looks like in a clinic at 2 in the morning. Why prioritize electricity first? Because it delivers a social shock people can feel, fast. Health posts and schools light up. Diesel generators idle less and burn fewer liters. Windshield becomes reliable for vaccines and for food. For a bank that must prove itself, power is a visible early win. A pilot that stands as proof that cross-border projects in electricity can move. Indicators are concrete. A power purchase agreement, signed and posted. An engineering, procurement, and construction contract, executed with milestones. A published energization date for the interconnector. And a rising electrification rate for clinics and schools along the line that any citizen can verify. Walk south to the river basins where farms wait for rain that does not come when it is needed. This is where Mamadou stands on the cracked soil of his field and points to a river that crosses a border without a plan. His crop fails not because he is lazy, but because the water is ungoverned. One canal, properly sited and built with a cross-border management rule, is the line between hunger and a harvest. Irrigation is the quiet multiplier. It protects households from the chaos of short rains. It lengthens growing seasons, stabilizes yields, and cuts the hours women spend carrying water. Are plain. The first canal segment, completed and flowing. Discharged of hectares, brought under reliable irrigation. The measured drop in waterborne disease as taps and chlorination arrive. Nasday tracked by local health posts.
Now, go to the capital of Niger and buy a bag of cement.
The price is higher than at the seaport, often by half again. That gap is not quality, it is logistics. It is the cost of a system that strips value out of every trip. The cure is not a miracle ribbon of steel, from horizon to horizon, promised and delayed. The cure is a realistic rail package that moves faster than egos do. Prepare the ground, with design and rights of way. Build the minimum viable segments that matter most for bulk freight. Add rolling stock that can run now. Then integrate schedules and tariffs so freight can move without guesswork. The indicators are rigorous. A shorter end-to-end transit time, in kilometer, and a higher monthly tonnage through the corridor, recorded in a public report. These three cases tell one story. Start with projects that touch the daily life of households and move regional trade, and do it in a way that can be measured without a doctorate. The electricity interconnector has documents you can post on day one. The canal has a map you can print in a village square. The rail improvement has a timetable traders can memorize, because it is predictable. Each is a cross-border project, linked to electricity, water, or railway. Each builds the habit of reporting in public. Crimson Ahe gives content to African independence, beyond a speech. Place them on the scoreboard, and the logic becomes hard to argue with. Green on paid-in capital makes the power line possible. Green on transparency lets farmers see the canal map before bulldozers arrive. Green on the human indicator proves that land was acquired with consent and with compensation paid on time. When all three lights line up, the Sahel Alliance is not only financing Pan-Africanism, it is practicing it at school, at market, and at the loading yard. Some will ask, which first? If you had to choose one opening project for the bank, which would you pick? Would you power the clinics and the classrooms? Would you bring water to fields that have waited a generation? Or would you cut the logistics tax that bleeds the market and blocks the promise of export? Your answer will tell us what kind of sovereignty you want to see and how you measure dignity. The comments, and we will build the next scoreboard around the choice the audience makes. This is not an abstract debate. It is a list of contracts and a chain of invoices. It is a map, a meter, and a receipt. It is also the most faithful way to honor the spirit at the heart of Pan-Africanism, that borders should not break the future of a people. Electricity, water, whenever rail. Say it, and we will track it as a public test of cross-border projects in electricity, water, and railway. Clang claimed to turn words into work. Risk is not a headline. Not a foal is not a freakwalker. It's done to what a national instance of the poor. It is a chain of events that can unspool a project. Unspool. It is not a nafol as Markley would lately say, it is any speech can repair it. It is far than any one late TV after choosing where to start. On ITC. Not. What to get far the chieve and how to blunt the blow when it does. This is African politics explained, not at the level of contracts, invoices, and reconciled ledgers. Begin with political risk. A change of leadership in any member of the Sahel Alliance flicks a policy, stall a transfer, or reopen a contract, dismissing that looked firm on Friday and shaky by Monday. Cabinets shuffle, priorities shift, disrogatures that seemed permanent turn provisional overnight. The remedy is not wishful thinking. It is a legal ring fence around money already paid in, angling clear separation from day-to-day budget politics, and in rules that outlast a reshuffle or a cabinet change. Backstage clauses, continuity undertakings, step-in rights. Quarantine should be standard so projects survive political weather. Next comes competition inside the house. Each country is poor. Each wants a win. Each can argue its corridor matters most. If the bank chooses without a public method, a quiet dispute can block an agenda for months. Use an explicit rationing formula. Confiscated projects with a transparent score that weights forestry impact, speed to first disbursement, cost per beneficiary, value for trade and energy security. Jumhur the long list and the short list. Timetable minutes that show how scores became decisions. Prescribe disbursement priorities to measurable cross-border externalities, so winners are obvious even to those who wait their turn. Then there is security, and the security tax that rides on every invoice. Insurers add premia. Contractors add guards, fences, and standby days to their bids. Worms reroute and idle while waiting for escorts. Temporary access roads, modular bridges, safe laydown areas must develop smooth and expected basis before the first unit of permanent infrastructure is poured. None of this wins a ribbon cutting, but all of it costs money and time. If you do not budget for it at the start, it will ambush you in the middle, now flush with overruns and delay. A realistic bill of quantities includes security management, community liaison, contingencies, written in plain language so no one is surprised. So how do you cushion the system without dulling accountability? Start with a legal ring fence around paid-in capital, supported by trust accounts that segregate funds by project and by milestone. Add an independent audit every quarter. A plain language summary the public can read in under 5 minutes. Constitute an independent procurement board, insulated from ministerial pressure, requiring conflict of interest declarations, and disclosing scores when it awards a contract. For large tranches, route disbursements through a third-party escrow that releases funds only when milestones are certified. Publish a monthly variance report that tracks plan versus actual. For capital calls and disbursements, so drift is visible early. Design the contract toolkit for a rough neighborhood. Price adjustment clauses should cover fuel, cement, and steel. Inflation does not force a renegotiation every season. Security and community liaison. Explicit cost lines, not hidden assumptions. Step-in rights that allow the bank to replace a non-performing contractor without touchscreening the procurement clock. Insecute resolution, a neutral forum, a short timetable, and a clear path to interim relief, so machines keep moving while lawyers argue. Finally, prevent the quiet civil war over the first slice of the pie. Publish a simple allocation rule that divides the early pipeline among the 3 states. Elicit a balance of fairness and urgency. 1/3 equal share, 1/3 by cross-border impact. Forehand is an example, not a decree, but a rule like it keeps a coalition intact. Norwich that with the human indicator we said earlier. Unpredicted advances to first disbursement. Nesde unless community consultation is documented. Land is mapped and compensated. And grievances are logged and answered on time. These are not academic niceties. They are shock absorbers. They protect the timeline when politics wobbles. They keep bids honest when fear rises. They hold the alliance together when envy knocks at the door. They also give investors the one thing money respects above all else. That survives a bad week. This is African geopolitics reduced to the discipline of a calendar and a checklist. Peacefully, discipline can carry a project through a storm. Which risk reduction measure do you want to see implemented first? The ring fence around paid-in capital. The quarterly independent audit. Independent tender board. Third-party escrow for major tranches. Or the transparent allocation rule that prevents internal gridlock. Plunge us. And we will set our scoreboard to watch it in real time. Here is where the story leaves the studio and enters your hands. We have built the scoreboard, set the traffic lights, and named the risks. Need a citizen engine to keep the numbers honest. Join the watch. Use the tag #BCIDWatch, or in our shared language, #KiemTuanChuQuien. At the end of each quarter, go to the finance ministry websites of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Quarterly budget execution. The capital call notice. The disbursement report from the bank. and any procurement gazette that lists awarded contracts. Quarantine and buy a document. Paste the link in the comments under this episode. Conclusive it with hashtag BCIDWatch so the whole community can verify. We will pin a thread every quarter to collect those links in one place and fold them into the public scoreboard. To make this easy, use a simple community checklist. First, ask what has been published this month. Has the bank posted its charter, its full board roster, its project scoring rulebook, its quarterly capital call report, refreshed its quarterly disbursement report, and the index for its data room? If a file is missing, say so in plain words. Second, ask how much paid in capital has increased. Lorska nung for the number transferred by each treasury, the date it landed, peacefully reconciliation entry in the bank's ledger. Third, ask which projects have advanced a step. Did any cross-border project move from study to board approval, from approval to a signed procurement plan, or from plan to first disbursement? When a step is confirmed, capture the date, the document, and the milestone. This is how African Politics Explained becomes a participatory audit anyone can perform. Do not let jargon block your path. You do not need a degree to read a report cover and a signature page. You do not need an inside contact to see whether a file is posted or not. Norfolk. Mission to ask a public institution to obey its own calendar. If a website is down, take a screenshot of the error and timestamp it in the comments. Vimeo is locked behind a login without a legal basis. Note that too. Confiscated one way in a press conference and another way in a ledger. Write both side by side and ask which is true. OOM, we will collect your fines, cite you by name if you wish, and update the scoreboard, so each quarter's truth sits in one place. Now to the diaspora. Because Pan-Africanism is not only a feeling, it is a workflow. If you are an energy engineer in Montreal or Houston, a project finance lawyer in Paris or London, or a logistics planner in Dubai or Johannesburg, your expertise can shorten the distance between a promise and a ribbon cut. Start with a 2-page brief, in plain language. For power, propose a standard bundle for a cross-border solar and transmission project, a term sheet for a power purchase agreement, submerged, a template for grid interconnection studies, and a construction milestone schedule linked to disbursements. For rail, propose a light PPP structure for priority segments, a scope outline for design and build, a rolling stock lease framework, and a tariff and timetable model traders can understand. For procurement, propose a scoring rubric that weights cross-border benefits, speed to first disbursement, and local content, in a way a board can defend in public. Attach your resume and 3 references. End your brief with a 1-page annex, which clauses you are ready to draft on day 1. Continuation from a counterpart inside the ministry or the bank. Send the brief to the relevant ministry. Copy the bank if its mailbox is public. Dacted version with us. We will host a rotating segment that features the best submissions and tracks whether an institution picks them up. If a ministry requests volunteers for a working group, on a power purchase agreement, a rail right-of-way, or a procurement rulebook, we will announce it. If they do not, we will still publish your templates, so public debate rises in quality and specificity. When you post your work or your document finds, keep the tags live. BCIDWatch is for quarterly accountability on capital and projects. Zinc Kiem Tuan Chu Kien is for the broader effort to treat sovereignty as a discipline. A few words about what you learned. Was the document easy to find? Was the number clear? Did the project step forward or stall? This is how a comment section becomes an archive. Dubious, and how a channel becomes an institution that outlasts a news cycle. We will match your energy with our own. Each quarter, we will release a 5-minute update that shows the scoreboard, names the documents that moved, and credits the viewers who surfaced them. We will track paid-in capital, the project count with board approval and disbursement schedules, and the transparency grade, along with the human indicator on consultation and land. We will also flag any variance between what was promised and what was posted. Schizophrenia, and we will ask for a correction. The lights turn green, we will say so. When they slip to yellow or red, we will explain why, with receipts. This is also a chance to teach by doing. We will publish a short guide on reading a capital call, understanding a disbursement schedule, and spotting the parts of a procurement plan that matter most, or community consultation, showing what real minutes look like, what a grievance log should record, and how a resettle. None of this replaces institutions. It strengthens them by expecting more and proving citizens can meet them halfway. It also sends a message to investors watching with folded arms that African independence is not a slogan to be applauded and forgotten, but a practice that is documented and repeated. Alliance institutions publish and keep their calendars. Caution will soften and capital will follow. If they do not, the public record will show that too. Either way, the truth will not be lost. So tell us, what will you do this month for hashtag BCIDWatch? Semantics, will you chase a missing report? Will you translate a disbursement table into human words? Will you draft a template for a power purchase agreement or a rail contract and send it to the right inbox? Will you explain, in 3 paragraphs, how to run a fair tender? Say it out loud in the comments. Yums, we will listen. We will feature the best work. Simultaneous work. We will keep this story grounded in documents, deadlines, and the dignity of results. Here is where we close the circle and set the measure by which this story will be remembered. BCID is Ibrahim Traore's biggest gamble. In the next 12 to 18 months, fleece must become construction sites. If at least 3 cross-border projects must carry board decisions, public files, and dated disbursement schedules. That is the core message. That is the test of leadership we will hold to the light, month after month. We are not asking for miracles. We are asking for receipts. The promise of African sovereignty becomes real. When trucks roll, when pylons rise. When a clinic in Dori no longer keeps a kerosene lamp as a backup. When a farmer like Mamadou can count on water that does not vanish between borders. Newfoundland can move a load at a price that does not punish ambition. When those moments arrive, the numbers on the scoreboard will not be abstract. They will be the shadow of construction cranes at dusk, of substations at night. So, we will do what we said. We will publish the scoreboard each month. We will track the paid-in line that proves the 5% is real. We will count the projects that cross borders, therapists and carry both a stamp and a schedule. We will grade governance by the documents that go live on time and in full, and we will keep the human indicator on the same page. Friendships and day, consultation and land are treated as seriously as steel and concrete. 18 months from now, we will return to this episode and ask a simple question. Did a bank become a builder? Did speeches become budgets? And did budgets become works? A company, if yes, the story of Sahel's sovereignty will be written in concrete and steel, in pylons and rails, in canals and transformers. If not, it will drift like a promise in a harmattan wind and vanish into the sand. The choice sits with the leaders of the Sahel Alliance. The oversight sits with us. Tell us now which project you want first, and which document you want decoded next. Poisoned, do you choose electricity, water, or rail as the opening proof? Zook, you want the charter, the scoring rulebook, the first capital call, or the first disbursement schedule explained line by line? In the comments. And add your city, labyrinth, so the diaspora map begins to draw itself. Like, subscribe, and share to help build a public record that does not fade. Then come back each month and read the scoreboard with us. BCID is Ibrahim Traore's biggest gamble. In the next 12 to 18 months, 5% must become construction sites. They at least 3 cross-border projects must carry board decisions, public files, and dated disbursement schedules. 18 months from now, we will come back to this page and measure what changed. The leaders of the Sahel Alliance hold the choice. We hold the watch.